Hey, Curtis.
Hey Oz,
What do you have for us this week?
this week we've got Starship Troopers with a pinch of The Queen, Futurama's Slurm Factory, and a whole lot of Joe's Apartment. This week we're watching 1986's Aliens.
Joe's apartment.
I mean, there's bugs everywhere, right? It's
I thought it was because the Jerry O'Connell reference. No, I'm kidding. Joe's apartment. Oh,
Joe's Apartment.
That movie isn't terrible. Like, I have seen it. It's not good. Like, it's not going to win any awards. But for a movie with that kind of premise, like, it is kind of fun. You know,
it's an apartment full of bugs. It's Joe's apartment.
Yeah, and he just if you can't beat him, join him. So it is a little fun. Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to another week of Let's Talk About Flicks, the weekly podcast where we take a monthly theme and satisfy the theme gods. One of your hosts, Oz.
I'm the other host, Curtis.
And we are here in week 2 of January 2023. This month's theme is sequels better than the original.
Yes.
We kicked off with a softball last week with Thor Ragnarok, which I don't think anybody would doubt is actually the superior of that film.
Thor: The Dark World is my favorite MCU movie. Malekith is the best MCU villain.
Any movie that references the ether is the best, and Doctor Who for life. Like,
did you just don't get it, man?
Yeah, did you see this semi-truck turn in midair? Do you know they did that with practical effects? And, like, okay. But no, last week was a softball, and now we get into the real journalism. This is digging.
Yes, this is a controversial choice, and it is my choice. As I was, doing my due diligence and research on the Internet Movie Database, Aliens is ranked 65 on the Internet Movie Database. Alien is ranked 51. So I am going against public grain here by bringing Aliens to the table. And Alien is an amazing movie.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And like I said, this is one of these we win either way arguments. Because even if you're a fan of Alien, we're not disagreeing with you. We're not saying this is a good movie, the other one's a bad one. We're just saying in this week, your thoughts are that this is just a better film, maybe even more enjoyable. Might be a better way to phrase it.
I find it more enjoyable, but again, I am open to disagreement on this. Comment below with your thoughts and disagreements.
Click like on the video and let us know in the comments. Subscribe and
like and subscribe. Comment below.
Do all those things and but no, this is really this week and the next 2 weeks they're just, it's a fun conversation because even a reference to the prequel of the movie we're talking about, in this case Alien compared to this week's Aliens, is like, it's still a fun conversation. There's no argument to be made about like the jokes we just said about the MCU villains and et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, it's like Alien's a great film. It's the same villain, just amped up. I saw, I wasn't even looking for it. I don't think I was. I don't remember. I just saw kind of a meme come across Facebook, just this like clickbait for a meme list or whatever. One of the memes in there was about aliens, and it was like Cameron sitting down with the execs, and they're like, "So what are we going to call this new movie?" And he's like, "Well, hear me out. The first movie had an alien, and what if we just add an S?" And he's like,
"There's plural alien."
He's like, "Okay, plural, I'm with you." And he's like, we're going to have more aliens. And they're like, oh my God, then they're like, their brain exploded. It's like, that's pretty much what it was. It's like, hey, you remember?
More than one alien.
Right. You remember that movie that Ridley made where we hid the alien in the dark for most of the movie? Yeah. What if we just throw them at the screen until the turrets run out of bullets, and then we just keep coming? Yeah, there's a lot of aliens in this movie.
Yes, there are. This is a high-octane movie.
Right. Before we get there, though, we do want to give a shout-out to Patreon subscribers. Don S., Melissa L., Aaron A., and Mandy K. Thank you again for your patronage. We greatly enjoy it. And really, the show wouldn't continue if it weren't for your patronage.
It's my weekly sense of purpose is hearing your 4 names read.
Well, and we've got to be honest, we got a lifestyle to maintain. You know, now that we've got that Patreon money, we've got to, I've changed the way I live. I quit my job.
Yeah, you have.
We
had a lot of conversation about that, but you insisted on it.
Yeah, I quit my job, and this is what I do. I just wait for the weekly mentions. I mean, granted, the Patreon money's only monthly, but it's really driven me to be more frugal, and supporting my family on our Patreon donations. So thank you, subscribers, because this is a lifestyle I aim to keep.
I've done the opposite. I'm living a more opulent lifestyle.
Yeah.
I've all these books behind me are just for show. Right. I've never cracked them. I'm actually illiterate. It's not something I'm proud of.
Now, I remember you telling me pre-show that all those books, you purchased the books and then ditched the books, and that's actually just a display of dust jackets behind you.
It is, yeah. It's right. I found a bunch of Webster's dictionaries at a garage sale, and so I printed off the dust jackets and wrapped them around.
Mm-hmm. Smart move. It makes people think that you are a learned man.
So. I'm not. I'm really not.
You're not. No, it's not at all. So I'm going to jump into some characters of this James Cameron classic. I was looking at Cameron's filmography, and it's like he rightfully so gets lumped in with like the Hollywood big guns. Your Spielbergs, your Coppola, your Scorsese. Your Tarantino. Like he's up there, right? You can even throw in Christopher Nolan. G's. Exactly. Right.
You're Mick G.
We can't forget Mick G. But no, he's up there. But when you look at his filmography, like he really hasn't made a whole bunch. He's got Terminator 2, Aliens.
Well, especially the last couple of decades.
Right. True Lies, Avatar, Titanic, and then just a bunch of. He had like Piranha 2 or something like that.
Well, didn't he write one of the Rambo movies?
I think so, but I'm just going in terms of like what he's directed. Like when he steps up to the plate, he's swinging for the fences.
Yeah,
and so kudos to James Cameron for that. Of course, I'm sure you've read it. I've heard about it too. It was like not the easiest man to work for.
Well, I mean, he's on his 5th marriage.
And so, but again, when he's making a movie, expect a good time.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to get into our cast a little bit here. We get a return character of Ellen Ripley, Sigourney Weaver. She being the survivor of the Nostromo in the original Alien. She put herself in hypersleep, and we'll let you get into the plot. And we are now in the future, even further into the future. So everybody else in this movie that Sigourney Weaver or Ripley is interacting with was not around when she fought the first alien. So we've got Carter J. Burke, played by Paul Reiser, who he's just
mad about you. Hi-yo!
Hey! He does a great job, I'll give him that, because he has that just very like comfortable, lovable, like I'll be your buddy, but let's not forget ourselves, he's a corporate rep for Weyland-Yutani.
He's so sleazy. Sleazy.
He's just so disgusting.
He's like the aliens version of Ellis from Die Hard.
Right, exactly. But
less cocaine, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, you take Ellis and Hans Gruber and like mix them up in a bowl, and you've got Carter J. Burke. Because he is like charismatic and sociable. It's like you don't hate the guy until he gives you reasons to hate the guy.
Uh-huh.
And so he and Ripley team up, kind of. But then we meet. Yeah, we meet up really with a bunch of just Marines, Colonial Marines. I'm just going to go through them quickly. They are important, but I know you'll get to them more in the plot. We got Michael Biehn playing Dwayne Hicks. He's the corporal in the Colonial Marines.
Yeah.
We've got Bill Paxton as Hudson.
Game over, man. Game over.
Game over. We've got Gorman, played by William Hope. He's kind of their commanding officer, and he's a noob, total noob.
Yep. Yeah, he doesn't do a good job at commanding. The one
not
thing he's
much
supposed
at
to
all. You know, we've got Frost, played by Rico Ross. You know, Al Matthews playing Apone. You know, we've got Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez. We've got Drake, Mark Rolston. I mean, just, I mean, it's a large cast, and they're all, like, necessary. But, come on, let's not kid ourselves. You know, it's a battle royal out there. And a couple other characters we have that I definitely don't want to leave out. We've got Carrie Henn playing Newt, young girl. Oh, yeah, mostly playing Newt.
Mostly.
And we can't forget Lance Hendrickson as Bishop, which I really enjoy his role in this because, I mean, granted, this is, I won't say early in his career, but he hadn't developed that Lance Hendrickson, like, typecast yet.
Sure.
And so to see him in this, where he's just like this wide-eyed android, like real reserved, not real Lance Hendrickson yet.
Yeah. It's not near like, dark.
No, or Pumpkinhead, or really any Lance Hendrickson movie outside of Aliens. And so that's really about it. I know I glossed over some of the Marines, but it is what it is. So did I leave anybody out that you wanted me to mention?
I think we got them all.
Yeah, because again, there's others.
It's Ripley, Newt, Burke, and a bunch of Marines. Exactly.
But again, I definitely wanted to mention, Hicks and Hudson and Vasquez, because those are my three favorites. So.
Yes, and I think most would agree with that as well.
All right. I'm going to sit back and let you guide this ship.
Speaking of ships, we open on the drop ship from the Nostromo, just floating out in deep space. It's been there for 57 years, Oz. A salvage crew comes across this drop ship that, again, Ripley, and she put herself in, and, she ejected the alien from the first movie, the Xenomorph from Alien, singular. And she put herself and Jonesy the cat, the only survivors of the Nostromo, in this drop ship, and they've just been floating in space, and just like a drop in the ocean. A ship come across a drop in the ocean. This salvage crew just comes across the ship in the middle of deep space.
I thought the same thing. When you think about just how ridiculous it is, like if you're stranded at sea, to just be left with hope that someone comes across you with the vastness of the ocean. It's like, take that type of internal terror and put it in space. Like, I'm pretty confident that if you were floating around in the ocean, someone would come across you within 57 years.
Yeah.
But not in space.
It's like Castaway. It's kind of a Castaway kind of moment.
Oh, yeah. Only sleeping the whole time.
Yes. Not floating on a raft. Although it's not, that analogy is not too far off.
No.
So they come to at Gateway Station, which is just this gigantic community space station that's above Earth. Carter Burke comes in. He says he works for the company. So the company still exists 57 years later. We later find out it's Weyland Yutani. Jonesy then starts hissing at Ripley.
Oh, yeah.
Just starts hissing at her.
I noticed that too.
And she's like, what's going on? And then she starts screaming, knocking things over, just out of nowhere. We just met the Burke character. She's just coming to. And she starts screaming at the nurse to kill her. Like, kill me. And she pulls her shirt back to reveal her stomach. And a newborn alien is just about to pop out of her stomach.
After 57 years.
Yes. And she comes to, it was all a dream. That's all it was missing. It was Wayne and Garth.
That's all. That's it. Yep. Little foxy lady on the soundtrack.
do, 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 do. Ripley. Do, 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 do.
Right? Burke just goes swing.
So Ripley comes to, it was all a dream. You got to imagine she's probably been having this dream for like 57 years or so. I mean, she's clearly traumatized from the experience on the Nostromo. You know, she witnessed the deaths of everybody else on her crew. And Bert comes in for real this time. And
which is kind of messed up, which is like, that's got to terrify her, because up to this point in the movie, the first time we saw Burke was in her dream sequence.
Yes.
Imagine if the first time she saw Burke was in her dream sequence, and then Paul Reiser walks in the door. Like, oh my God, I just dreamt of you.
I'm Paul Reiser. You may remember me from such dreams as the one you were just having.
You know, it's like that. I mean, granted, for her to go from the ship to this room, I mean, I'm sure they've crossed paths at some point. But it was just like, for our introduction to him being a dream, and then to see him for real, it's like, oh, I hope that wasn't the same for her, because that would be one twisted reality.
That would. Oh, man, that's the guy.
Oh, he's from the company.
So we get I know, Oz, as you and I were watching this film and preparing, we watched the director's cut. So there's a couple of scenes in here that we'll make mention of it, because I think it really tells a better and more thorough story. You know, some directors' cuts are very indulgent. I really feel like this one did a better job kind of completing the tale.
I agree.
And this early scene in the movie, she's sitting on a bench in the space station. Now, for a moment, it looks like she's in a park on Earth, but she's in a room that's basically made up to look like a park, complete with, you know, like a green screen and everything in there. And Bert comes in, and they're prepping for this deposition that she's got to give. Like, you blew up a ship, you know, billions of dollars worth of material and whatnot. You're gonna have to speak to this. And she's like, no, first tell me about what happened to my daughter. And because when she was on the Nostromo, she had a daughter back on Earth who was around the age of 10 or so. And, you know, I was, you know, I'll be back in time for your birthday kind of thing. And Burke tells her she passed away from old age. She was in her late 60s. She died. And they show a picture of her daughter as an elderly woman. And I guess the picture of her daughter, you know, as an elderly woman, was Sigourney Weaver's actual mother.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Like, your daughter died, but here's a picture of your mom, Sigourney. Just so you know what she would look like. I wonder if we're going to get any other, like, roughly 10-year-old girls in this movie to fill that void.
We'll see if that happens. Mostly.
Mostly happens.
Mostly. So they cut to this deposition that Ripley's given, and it's this, you know, she's basically in like a boardroom kind of scenario, and these people are just grilling her. Like, how did you detonate this? There's no evidence of this alien. There's no evidence of anything. You know, and she's like, did IQs just drop sharply? This is what happened. There was thousands of these eggs down there. So they basically write her off. They don't believe her. They strip her of her rank.
Which is frustrating, because we know that she knows the company was after it.
Yeah.
Because of what's the android's name in the first one? It doesn't matter. Like, Ian Holmes' character. Like, he was given directives from the company, terminate everybody and bring these eggs back, you know, bring back a species. So she knew that because he told her.
Yep.
So she knows they're full of it. Granted, it is 57 years later, but she knows the company was behind it.
Yeah. And so, like, they end the meeting, and they're going, and you know, and they're kind of filing into the hallway, and Ripley pulls one of the guys aside, and he's like, "Has anybody been to this planet, to LV-426 in the meantime?" And and the guy's like, "Yeah, we've been terraforming there for 20 years. We've got families there. We've never had any encounters with these creatures you describe."
Right.
We cut to another director's cut moment here at Hadley's Hope, which is on LV-426, population 158. We get a classic Cameron kid on a big wheel, past a Weyland-Yutani sign. The boss there reveals that the company ordered them to send a team out to investigate some coordinates, some site, and it turns out to be Newt's family. So it's a father and a mother.
It's just kind of a mom and pop little operation.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah. And then Newt and the brother. I understand why they cut this one from the theatrical cut, because it does kind of give away some of the game here.
Yeah.
But I think in retrospect, upon multiple viewings, it adds a lot, you know, to your fandom type people here.
Oh yeah.
And so they pull up to the site, and the mother and father go in to investigate, leaving the kids in this transport vehicle, and they're just kind of like napping and the door flies open, and the wife has dragged the husband back. Newt just starts screaming, and you kind of get a POV shot from her looking down, and the husband's got a face hugger on his face.
Yeah, he does. Him's getting impregnated.
Yeah. Yes, we could also really get into the reproductive methods of the Xenomorphs here, and just how gruesome it is, and how violating it is.
Violating is the worst exact word I was going to spit out. Yes. It's so violent and violating.
It's basically rape. Is how these Xenomorphs impregnate people.
You're going to carry my baby, and you're not going to like it.
Yes, we could get into the sociopolitics of that, but it's very discomforting.
That's for our other show, Good Times with Oz and Curtis.
This week we're going to talk about xenomorph rape.
That's right.
Good Times with Oz and Curtis.
Stay. Come back next week where we go through mansplaining.
Oh, so we're back on Gateway Station. Burke and Gorman, we meet Gorman for the first time. Lieutenant Gorman go to Ripley's apartment, and they say, we've now lost all contact with LV-426.
Just coincidentally, when we, good thing the timelines, were in sync here.
Yes. They've been fine for 20 years, and then I'm assuming days after this meeting.
Remember that planet? Yeah, remember that planet you were just concerned about?
We want you to come with us as a consultant to our military operatives. And so she, after much consternation, understandably so, she agrees to go. Burke says, we'll reinstate your rank. And she agrees to go on the condition that we're going to go there to wipe them out, not to bring them back, not to study. We're going there to eliminate these things. That's how dangerous they are. And he's like, yeah, you have my word. Oh, he's so slimy.
Yes, he is.
We then cut to arguably the most intimidating spaceship I've ever seen, Oz. Like, the entire spaceship basically looks like a gun.
Yeah, oh yeah, it does. It's like a transformer flying through space.
Basically, yeah. It looks like Megatron out there in deep space. So this Marine ship is transporting them. The ship is called the Sulaco. There's just weapons and military hardware and artillery everywhere. You get the lay of the land in there. The computer then wakes them all out of stasis. Apone, who's the sergeant, immediately puts a cigar in his mouth. Yeah. Vasquez gets up. She starts doing, first thing she does is doing pull-ups. You kind of get the idea that, with the exception of Gorman, all of the other dozen Marines in this troop have been together for a long time.
Yeah, I've seen this. Like, Hudson turns on Long Tall Sally.
Yeah.
and starts dry shaving.
Yeah. Hicks spits chew all over Gorman's shoe.
Vasquez starts telling jokes about his wife.
Oh, wait. Wrong way.
Gee, I have.
They start talking about Hoppa.
Exactly.
Jim Hoppa.
Right. But that's a different Alien movie for the future.
Yes.
I would say that's not canon, but...
Yeah. So these military guys, these Marines start joking. You kind of get the idea these are, they're pretty misogynistic. They're talking about liberating colonists from things. They're very crude. It's that sort of, those sensibilities. These guys also were very cocky and overconfident, very arrogant.
Oh, yeah. Well, you just get the vibe that they've never run up against something they couldn't take care of.
Yeah. They've never had that real life or death kind of situation. During a meal, Bishop does the knife thing with Hudson, where like you spread your fingers on the table and you quickly stab the knife into the table between each finger, revealing that Bishop is an android, Oz. And as you mentioned earlier, Ripley was with an android that kind of went nuts on the orders of the company, and was basically willing to sacrifice the humans on the Nostromo just so they can bring the Xenomorph back and study it. So on deck, Gorman clearly does not know his team. Like, he's getting their names mixed up. He's barking orders, trying to establish his dominance. Calls Ripley up as the consultant. She tells him what's what. One of these things destroyed my whole crew. They kind of half take her seriously. I get the impression they take her a little more seriously than Gorman. We continue to see them prepping. We see Spunkmeyer, who's the co-pilot, in a giant mech loader, like a big mech suit that you step into. Yeah. Wonder if that's going to come back later.
I doubt it, but I believe he is of the Otis Spunkmeyer Cookie Company.
Yeah,
that's a different corporation that he's a part of.
That's the real company in charge here.
It's not Weyland-Yutani.
It's Otis Spunkmeyer.
Right.
building cookies for better worlds.
Right, yeah. That's what the mech suit's for. It's like a pallet loader.
Yeah, it puts all the trays into the oven. It's very efficient how it works.
Right. It's a big oven, yeah.
It's a very, very large oven.
They don't say what year it was, but you figure if Pizza the Hut can go intergalactic, Otis Spunkmeyer can.
Otis to me, okay, that's going to be the company to me for the rest of this recording, by the way.
Otis Spunkmeyer
is the company. Burke's trying to smuggle a xenomorph back for Otis Spunkmeyer.
Right. Like, what kind of cookie would you make with that? Snickerdoodles or something?
Otis Spunkmeyer has a really high-tech bioweapons division.
Right.
So Ripley also demonstrates that she can operate one of these mech suits as well. And I love the little moment here. She's feeling like useless, and she's like, I can drive one of those suits. Let me help. And Apone and Hicks are kind of talking and going over stuff. And I love, as we go along here, I absolutely love the dynamic between Hicks and Ripley throughout this entire movie. And at the risk of pushing our PG limit here a little bit, Ripley gets in the mech suit and she picks up a missile to go load it into the ship. And she turns and looks at Hicks and Apone and kind of goes like, "Where do you want it?" Yeah. And they both kind of like, ha ha ha.
Showing
Bay 12, please.
It's the second swing of the movie.
It is. There's lots of Wayne's World swings in here.
Yeah. I think one of them calls her Abraham Lincoln.
She had a python around her shoulders as well. Is that you or the snake? So they got the dropship prepped, and I think the APC is like the vehicle, like the wheeled vehicle that drives into the dropship and has all the Marines in there.
Because the name of it matters.
Yeah,
like and I do love the attention to detail that sci-fi movies get. Like I'm not dismissing that at all. But it's like something like that. Like, if you don't know the name of the ship, you can still enjoy this movie. Like, the same with the Star Wars universe. You don't have to know the difference between a TIE fighter and an X-Wing. You can enjoy the movies.
It's Millennium Falcon, not Millennium Falcon. Get it together.
Right. It's not called AT-AT. It's an AT-AT.
It's an AT-AT.
Right.
Shut up, move. So they're in the dropship Oz. Gorman reveals that he's had 38 simulated drops, and this is his second his second live combat drop. So they drop from the Sulaco. They fly by the colony. Burke's kind of bragging about the atmospheric processor, which the company makes, by the way, just in case you didn't know. So it's like he's in sales mode, like with Ripley
all the time. Yeah, it's like he's trying to sell a timeshare. Like,
yeah. There's no sign of the colonists, but the power is still on. So the dropship sets down, and the APC drives off with the Marines in it. Hudson, run a bypass as they get to the compound and get the doors open. The interior of the colony is in ruins. There's like holes in the floor from the aliens' acid. There's no sign of anyone everywhere. They note that there was a firefight. They use their motion trackers. I love all like the gizmos that the Marines have.
Yeah.
like the motion trackers. Hicks picks up something that's just hamsters. Gorman declares the area is secure, and so they go in and they all meet up at the operations base in the colony. And Hicks kind of takes a moment, asks Ripley if she's all right, because he's kind of in tune with her. He by far is the one who's kind of keeping an eye on her the most.
He's got a crush too.
I think he does. Yeah,
I think he does.
In Med Lab, they find several dead facehuggers and 2 ones that are still alive in what I can only describe as science tubes.
Yeah, exactly. they're in like capped off beakers.
Yeah, they're in a couple Bunsen burners.
Yeah.
So let's see. The motion detector picks up something else, Oz, and they find out it's Newt. We are introduced to Newt, the only survivor, the only human survivor, and this of the 158 people that were living there. Mostly, she's mostly the only survivor. Hicks calls Ripley to come talk to her, which again I think is a nod to just how kind of clever Hicks is.
Yeah.
He clearly sees Ripley's strengths, whereas the other Marines just kind of see her as more of kind of a nuisance, a civilian who's kind of there to get in the way.
And to be fair, Michael Biehn has experience with this, going like futuristic sci-fi, working with mothers that don't have a child, like yeah. In a James Cameron movie, like he's done this before.
He just needs to be wearing his Nikes.
He's been a futuristic soldier before.
It all falls into place for him. Ripley talks to Newt, kind of helps calm her down a little bit. Back in Med Lab, Gorman's just grilling Newt. Like, what happened? Tell us what happened. And Ripley's and Hicks are like, just back off.
Right.
And again, you see more of the relationship between Ripley and Newt form. Ripley tells Newt, like these are military guys. These are the Marines. You're safe. And Newt's like, it's not going to make a difference.
Right.
So
she knows.
I love, like, you could make an argument that like the first act of this movie moves slowly, but I love how it builds the tension and it lays the out. Yeah. Hicks ends up finding many colonists still alive, and they just happen to be in this atmospheric processor that Burke describes, several, like in like a basement level of it. So they all pile back in the vehicle and go to find him, Oz. As the Marines descend, they find like xenomorph secretions all over the place. Like it quickly transforms from this kind of like industrial setting to almost like the inside of like a beehive.
Well, it was very reminiscent of like what happens if you feed Mogwai after midnight. Like you just have that kind of sticky webbing everywhere.
Yes, everything's wet and moist.
Yeah, it just kind of glistens.
Yeah.
And,
I think even Frost mentions like it's hot as heck in here.
Yeah.
So like they're deep into it.
Oh, it's just a huge incubator.
Yeah. Ripley kind of asks like, what kind of facility is this? And what kind of weapons are your soldiers carrying? Because her and Burke and Gorman are back in the vehicle, just kind of leading over the radio. And Burke's like, oh, wait a second. This facility is basically a big like nuclear fusion reactor. Right. So you can't fire your weapons in here. So so these dozen Marines are in this alien, the Xenomorph hive, not knowing what's going on, very narrow setting, and they can't fire their weapons. So Gorman tells Apone, the sergeant, you're going to have to collect magazines. You can only use flamethrowers. That's it.
Yeah. Entertainment Weekly, Sports Illustrated.
Yeah. I love how magazines. It took me a second to get that. Nat Geo.
Cosmo. Collect them.
You got to roll them up and just whack them with
just big piles of magazines.
Just everywhere.
It's like, I don't even like to read. Well, you're going to have to start collecting magazines.
Yeah, collect magazines. I love
he's handing out Southern Living to everybody.
Highlights for kids.
Sorry guys, here's your Ranger Rick from 2 months ago. I forgot.
Oh man, I already did the crossword this one. I love Frost's reaction. He's like, what are we supposed to use? Harsh language?
Right.
So they come across some of the colonists still alive, attached to the walls by these secretions, serving as hosts for these xenomorphs. One of them wakes up and has his xenomorph hatch right out of her chest, and you see it keeps cutting back to Ripley's reaction, and it's so tense and so gruesome, and they end up turning the flamethrower on this civilian. I mean, she's basically dead already.
Yeah.
To finish her off and to kill this baby xenomorph, which gets the attention of the rest of the hive. Oz. The walls literally start moving.
It's so cool.
And their motion trackers start going off. Like I'm picking up multiple signals. Like they're in front of us, they're behind us, and I love how the scene takes its time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just right away.
And they don't. They don't notice it, and then suddenly a fight. Yes.
And suddenly one of them gets grabbed from behind. Another one. I think a couple of them get grabbed, including one of the ones with the flamethrower, who of course accidentally flamethrows Frost, the guy who had this bag of magazines and explosives on him.
And you know how flammable paper is.
Yes, it goes up just like that.
Burns all these magazines.
Yeah, Sports Illustrated for kids. Those extra trading cards they put in there, those are extra flammable.
Maxim. All the Maxims are up in flames.
On fire. I would always burn my Maxims when I was done with it, just to eliminate the evidence.
I didn't want to share them with Black Sox.
So he basically explodes, taking out. So within seconds, half of this troop is gone. Whether they were captured by aliens or killed in the crossfire, basically. The ones that are alive start retreating, and they're cut off. They got no place to go. And Gorman's he's barking out orders, like everything's fine. Retreat by platoon and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And Ripley's like, they're cut off. They got no place to go. And Gorman just freezes. He just freezes, covered in sweat.
Yeah.
So Ripley grabs the wheel of the vehicle and basically crashes through a wall to give them an exit. So Hudson, Vasquez, and Hicks all climb aboard while Drake is still kind of holding the line and covering their exit. And he ends up getting taken out, arguably the most gruesomely. Vasquez shoots an alien that's kind of descending on Drake and just smothers him in their acid.
Oh yeah, the acid, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just three of the Marines of the 12 that make it back. And one of the aliens gets its hands in the door as they're trying to close the vehicle. Was it Hicks? Hicks shoots him in the mouth with a shotgun, which of course coats Hudson's arm in acid. It's just such a tense scene. So eventually they drive out of there. They get out. They get clear, and Hicks has to come up and tell Ripley, like, ease down, we're clear. So they call in the dropship, which has been kind of parked on the other end of the complex. Let's come pick them up, because the only way we're getting out of here is, like, we got to go up and nuke them from orbit.
Yeah,
we're gonna just blow up the entire site from the Sulaco, from the big ship. So yeah, let's do it. Much to Burke's chagrin, because Burke is like, well, this is a multi-billion-dollar facility.
Right.
And Ripley's like,
there's got to be another way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they call in the dropship, and I love this little sequence here. So they're basically outside. They set off flares as markers. They're waiting for the dropship, and the dropship, as it's flying steadily, just tilts off its axis because one of the xenomorphs got inside and took out the pilot as they were flying to pick up everybody else, and the dropship just crashes, stranding the six of them there: Hudson, Vasquez, Hicks, Ripley, Newt, and Burke. And Bishop, I guess the seven of them.
Yeah. So he's a synthetic.
Yeah, he does count anyways.
No.
So they have to go inside because, as Newt says, they mostly come at night.
Mostly.
Mostly. What do you think of that?
She took that from Eric Cartman.
Yeah, Newt. Yeah, she was referencing South Park because this took place in the future after South Park had already.
Yeah, so she knew. Right, yeah, it's like it's weird how the lineage works. Yeah, the movie came out in '86, but it did take place in the future, so they knew about South Park before we did.
Yeah, it's called science. It's how timelines work.
Yeah, physics.
What do you think about the Newt character, Oz?
I almost put her in my bad. But she's not bad. I mean, she's fine.
Yeah.
She is traumatized.
Yes.
Like, and it just seems like she's constantly in a state of functional shock.
Which I think you could probably understand.
Oh, completely understand. But it's like when you think back to a movie like, we got over here. Oh, wrong shoulder. Night of the Living Dead. When, when Judith O'Dea's character... Barbara, witnesses her brother get murdered, and then these zombies are after her. Like, she basically shuts down for the remainder of the movie.
Yeah.
And because of the trauma she's been through. I feel like Newt is in a similar place, only with a little more survivor's instinct and a little more functionality to her. Because she doesn't really do anything to help anybody out. But, she is keen on how to survive in this environment. And so, but at the same time, it's a child actor, and there's the old adage about child actors, that they're rough to work with, and so, but I mean, she does fine.
Yeah, she was good enough.
Yeah.
So these 7 of them, they retreat back to the operations center of the colony. They go over what they've recovered from the drop ship. Ripley lays into Hudson because Hudson's just freaking out. Game over, man, game over.
Yeah.
They go over blueprints. They set up defenses, including in a director's cut. I'll be brief with this, but again, I understand how this didn't add to the narrative, but those sentry guns
in the
director's cut, like they're like motion detectors, and so they set them up in this tunnel, this access tunnel that the Xenomorphs have basically been using to get inside the colony base. It's really cool how those things work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hicks gives Ripley a tracker for her to wear. And you get another little Hicks-Ripley moment. Like, it's not like we're engaged.
It was
they're kind of smirking at each other.
Right. Which she then immediately gives to to Newt.
Yeah.
Immediately gives it to Newt.
So Newt goes down to sleep, and the rest kind of speculate, like, where are all these Xenomorphs coming from, these eggs? And Hudson speculates there's got to be something big, and Bishop suggests a queen. Ripley tells Bishop to destroy the live facehuggers, but he says Burke ordered him to preserve them. So they confront. So she goes and confronts Burke.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, well, if we don't bring him back, there's no exclusive rights, and Ripley's like, I'm gonna nail you to the wall for this. You're not gonna sleaze your way out of this one. And just at that moment, Bishop's like, well, the atmospheric processor took some damage, and it's going to explode in a matter of hours, basically setting off a nuclear reaction.
Yeah, with us here.
Yes. And Hudson's, we're doomed.
It's game over again, man. Game over again.
So Ripley's like, well, there's another dropship up on the Sulaco. We got to remote pilot that thing down here. But the only way they can do that is to go out to this, like, access antenna that's like basically in the middle, exposed in the whole compound, and Bishop volunteers to do it despite Ripley's reluctance and distrust of androids. And he's like, I may be synthetic, but I'm not stupid. But he goes out there and he crawls through the smallest conduit to get out.
I know he Andy Dufresne's himself out to that.
Yeah, he does.
Andy Dufresne had more room than, like, I felt for Lance Henriksen here, because it's like, that couldn't have been fun.
That was barely big enough to, just kind of like just shrug your shoulders and to move yourself along.
Well, and back in '86, like, film cameras were big. I'm curious, like, how they got the film camera in that tunnel.
Yeah, but it just looks so claustrophobic, and it works. So let's see. The remote sentries hold off the Xenomorphs. Hicks, one of my favorite little scenes in the movie, Hicks shows Ripley how to use the gun. Mm-hmm. And it's just another little bonding moment. And he's like, pump action grenade launcher, feel the weight.
Yeah.
You get another, you slap a magazine in hard. and
Yeah.
and then Hicks like, well,
It's
this
so
is the
gross.
Hicks is like, this is the grenade launcher, and Ripley's like you started this, show me everything, I can handle myself. And,
Right.
and he goes, yeah, I noticed.
He starts Tim Tayloring it.
Oh, gee whiz, man.
He goes all Toolman Taylor on her.
I love that scene because, again, it's like they have this really subtle like flirty relationship with him in the middle of all this, and it's so fun. Gorman comes to. Bishop makes it outside, and so he's able to remotely start piloting the dropship down. Ripley goes back to check on Newt again, who's been sleeping in the med lab, and they end up falling asleep together. They come to, and the door's locked, and those science tubes, which had the face huggers, the live face huggers, are now empty, and the gun that Ripley brought in with her is gone. Oz.
Yeah.
Burke turns off the security cameras. Turns out he's the one. He set them free in there. So they have to fight these things off, Newt and Ripley. Really tense scene as Ripley's holding off a face hugger. It gets his tail around her neck. The Marines finally take notice after Ripley's able to set off a smoke alarm to alert them. And they come literally crashing through because it would have taken too long to get the door welded or unwelded there. And they end up taking out both face huggers, and they're just about to take out Burke when the power gets cut. And Hudson's like, how do they cut the power? They're animals, man. And so
Game over.
We
understand, Hudson. The game is over.
Yes, the game is over. This isn't like Scarier or Operation. I was reading in the trivia that Hudson kind of came up with a little backstory for his character, in that with it being the future, he was trained on simulators a lot, and the simulators would end with a game over graphic on screen.
I like that. I like that.
So Hicks sends Vasquez and Hudson out with motion trackers, and they're picking up all sorts of signals descending on their sight. They made it through some barriers. They're inside the complex. They barricade themselves in the main operations room, and it's still pinging, Oz. These signals are still getting closer, and to the point that these signals appear that they're inside the room, but there's nothing visible there.
Right.
And so Hicks looks up at the ceiling, kind of pokes his head up through this drop ceiling. Turns out that's how they got in. So there's just dozens of them.
Like a bunch of cat. It's just like a bunch of cat burglars. Like,
yes, they were all wearing black turtlenecks as well, and they had suction cups on their knees and elbows.
They did. Well, how else would they be upside down?
Cat burglar. So they just start dropping through the ceiling tiles. Such a cool scene, and this firefight starts. So the Marines are trying to take him out. Burke runs off, locks the door behind him. Hudson finally has a little heroic moment until he gets pulled through the floor.
Oh, yeah.
By several aliens. So Hudson's gone.
His game's over.
Yeah, his game is finally over.
Right.
Turns out Burke is basically corners himself in the other room. So I think it's kind of inconclusive as to whether he's killed right there or he's taken back and cocooned. I guess they did film a scene later that they didn't include even in the director's cut because Cameron really didn't like how it turned out, where Burke was cocooned and Ripley comes across him and she says, like, here's all I can do for you, and she just hands him a grenade.
Oh, that's not really true to Ripley's character.
Yeah. So Newt ends up leading the survivors through some air ducts that she's used before, because that's how she survived, was just kind of crawling around ducts and hiding from the aliens for a month or so. Vasquez is holding them off because she's a beast. She's just an absolute warrior.
Jeanette Goldstein's so awesome.
Yeah, she does a good job in the role.
She's so versatile. Yeah. Like, she plays here, and of course she's like one of the vampires in Near Dark. She's the mom in Terminator 2, and like, if you didn't know that, you probably wouldn't recognize her between the three roles.
Yeah,
like, she's just that good.
I'll briefly say there's part of a reason you don't recognize her in this movie, which is actually going to come up a little later for me.
Okay.
As much as I like the character, the casting, we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
So they're in these ducts and they're making their way out, and Vasquez basically she gets to a point where she just gets overwhelmed with the aliens. Really cool scene. She's like hand to hand fighting with one, and she uses her foot and pins its head up against the wall and shoots it in the face with a pistol, but of course lets off the acid, burns her leg, she can't move. Gorman goes back for her. You know, the same Gorman who basically led to the deaths of several of them earlier. You know, she almost killed him herself earlier in the film, and they're surrounded. They're out of ammo, and they set off a grenade together to basically so they wouldn't get captured and at least try to cover the others' escape. So they blow themselves up. It's just Hicks. I just combined Ripley and Hickley is left.
It's Hinckley and Schmidt.
Hinckley and
so
Schmidt.
Otis Spunkmeyer and the
Otis,
bottled water company.
The bottled water. It's big Nestle. Nestle water.
That's the real corporation.
Yeah,
Nestle.
Nestle and Otis Spunkmeyer instead of Wayland Yutani. So they're trying to make their way out. Newt basically kind of slips and falls into like under some floor grating.
Yeah.
Like a drainage basically is the best way to describe it. So Hicks and Ripley go after her. She's still wearing the tracker. They get to her. They start using another one of their really cool gizmos. This little portable welding tool, like a torch, starts burning through the floor to get her out. But she's Newt's captured before they can get all the way through. So Hicks and Ripley have to but they can't help Newt right now. But they know that she's going to get cocooned, so she's still alive. But they got to save themselves in the moment. So they hop in an elevator, and it takes just a moment for the elevator door to close, just enough time for an alien to stick its head in.
Yeah.
Of course, Hicks is able to shoot it, but it splatters acid all over his chest. So basically incapacitates him. So Ripley gets Hicks outside, loaded up in the dropship, which Bishop is called down, and Ripley's like, we're not leaving yet. So they follow Newt's tracker to the atmospheric processor, where they've taken Newt to cocoon her. So they fly in, just as so Ripley's. She's arming herself up here, Oz, because again, this dropship's just loaded with weapons. She's
taping guns together and
grabbing all sorts of other equipment, grenades.
Luckily, there's one thing that I read in the trivia about Sigourney Weaver. She has like ridiculously long index fingers, so she was able to trigger two guns with one finger. She could reach across because it was really long fingers, like people call Kawhi Leonard the Sigourney Weaver of the NBA.
Kawhi Leonard is the Sigourney Weaver of the NBA. Got that?
Yeah. I've heard it. I've heard that. It was on Reddit.
Was it on Reddit?
Yeah.
Next time I watch a Clippers game, I'll have to listen for the music cues that they drop in from aliens.
Right. You'll hear a lot of crowd chanting for Dana.
Every time he makes a three, they play the soundbite, "Get away from her, you."
Right. There is no Dana, only Zool.
So
long fingers on Sigourney.
Well, she's 5'11". She's a very tall woman. So
she is.
So Bishop drops Ripley. She's all armored up. Just as she's about to leave, and this is another little director's cut moment. She looks back at Hicks and says, "See ya, Hicks," and he says, "It's Dwayne." And then she looks at him, Ellen, and then he just kind of grins at her. "Don't be gone long, Ellen."
Yeah.
Again, just I love it. I love it so much.
The real director's cut was when he said, "It's Dwayne." She rolls her eyes, and
of course it is.
Right, Dwayne. He makes fun of him for a couple minutes.
Yeah. He used to date a guy named Dwayne. Didn't work out.
Dwayne. That's what Newt fell down.
So stupid. He's got the flip top sunglasses like Dwayne Wayne from A Different World. Dwayne. What kind of loser name is that? Shut up, Ellen. So Ripley is back inside the atmospheric processor, where the Marines all got taken out earlier in the movie. and she's following the tracker. She's leaving like marking flares as she goes, so she can find her way back. Another little cool little thing that they included in there. There's no music at all in this scene. It's just the tracker beeping and like steam from the processor, which is slowly coming apart. That's all you hear. And eventually, Ripley comes across the tracker, but no Newt. At the same time, we cut to an egg unhatching, and Newt kind of coming to, and Newt just starts screaming because she's about to have a face hugger coming at her. And Ripley hears her scream and just sprints, just dead sprints to where she hears it from. Quickly takes out the face hugger, a couple more Xenomorphs that are nearby there, grabs Newt, and they kind of stumble around a little bit. And they end up in a room filled with eggs. Dozens of these giant eggs just sitting around. And there's no noise, no music here, except for Ripley's breathing and kind of like the pilot flame from the flamethrower. And then you hear something else breathing, Oz.
Yeah. We
see it, and again, I am not a biologist, but as I saw in the Wikipedia, an ovipositor laying an egg. Then we see the queen. Just as Hudson and Bishop had speculated earlier, there is a queen. And Oz, she is enormous.
She's massive. Yeah. Yes. Huge.
Some more Xenomorph smaller sentries kind of descend, but then Ripley kind of shoots her flamethrower into the air, and letting the queen know, I have the means to take out your eggs. And so they slowly back out, and just as Ripley and Newt are about to leave the room, one of the eggs starts hatching. And Ripley kind of cocks her head and then just starts flamethrowing the entire room. Takes out all the eggs, just unloads with her ammo. Starts pumping the
grenades.
Yeah, grenades into the ovipositor, which is, connected to the queen, which allows her to lay the eggs. So basically destroys the queen's means of reproducing. And they run off. They get in the elevator. The queen, very ghastly, disconnects herself from the ovipositor and takes off after Ripley.
Well, if somebody just murdered all your children, wouldn't you want to seek revenge?
I can understand how the queen would be angry. So Newt and Ripley go up in the elevator, and the queen gets in another elevator. Apparently, she knows how to work elevators. Not before, but first she playfully hits the floors for everyone, like Will Ferrell and Elf.
Well, I think what happened when Ripley and Newt were there, like she kept hitting the call button.
Yeah,
and so I think it just ended up calling both elevators.
Okay, that makes
that because I was thinking about that too, but it's like when they both descended, and then of course the other one was still on its way down when Ripley and Newt were on their way up.
Makes sense. So Ripley and Newt get out top, and the dropship is not there, and she's like, Bishop, that android. They always do this to me, as the androids.
Every 57 years, he gets screwed over by a droid.
By an android.
Fool me once, shame on me.
And so the other elevator pings, and the queen emerges, and Ripley just hugs Newt close your eyes, baby. And Bishop returns. Lowers the ramp. Ripley and Newt jump in. An explosion kind of knocks the ship a little further into the landing platform, but they're able to take off and get out of there. And they make their way out just in the nick of time. The plane explodes, a la, going back to the Star Wars references, the Millennium Falcon escaping from the Death Star as it explodes.
Right, exactly.
So back up on the Sulaco, all's well, right? This is it, Oz. They've made it back to the Sulaco. Everybody's safe.
Well, and I'll give Cameron some credit here. Like, even filmmaking wise, it's been a while since I've seen this. I knew how it ended, but he did a good job manipulating the runtime to where, like, when Ripley had 15 minutes left, it was exactly 15 minutes of filming time. And so now you've stretched out the action for that previous sequence. They've gotten away. You think everything's in the clear. I even literally checked the duration left, and there's just, a couple of minutes left in the movie before the credits roll. Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, because I seriously, I paused it and then like did a Google search because there was like, that was this movie, right? Like just enough to make you doubt what you thought was going to happen.
There's like a ticking clock and everything. Yeah. Big explosion. You think the movie's over. You think they're safe. And so Hicks has been sedated by Bishop. So that's basically the last you see of Hicks. You know he's alive, but he's been sedated. And so Newt and Ripley and Bishop kind of get on the ship's deck, and they're like, all right, well, glad that's over with.
Woo!
Just then, Bishop looks down because he sees and hears something burning a hole in the floor.
Yeah.
He is then punctured from behind through the chest by the Queen's tail. She's stowed away in the landing gear of the ship.
Yeah. All that milk he just drank is it's just now everywhere.
Well, he got to wash down the Otis Spunkmeyer cookies.
Right. They just celebrated with some corporation milk and cookies on the way home.
This round's on me.
Newt, you ever had a cookie? And they just filled their bellies on Otis Spunkmeyer.
These prepackaged cookies made 6 months ago.
I don't know why. I don't know how that was into the director's cut.
That really hits
all that milk and cookies splatters all over Sigourney's face.
Yep. So the Queen stabs Bishop through the chest, lifts him off the ground using her tail, brings him closer to her, and then she wraps her hands around either side of his torso and literally rips him in half. His torso and head fly to one side of the room. His waist and legs fly the other side of the room. Mm-hmm. And of course he's an android, so he's still alive. But he's helpless. He's just a torso and a head and arms just laying on the ground at this point.
And this scene was inspired by the flying monkeys tearing apart the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. I know it was. Had to have been. Because he was still a viable entity, but just in parts.
Yep.
I was waiting for him to go, there's part of me over here, and there's a little more of me over there.
Ripley starts scooping the milk up and dumping it back on top of him.
She's just like pulling it in her hands. Here, Bishop,
here's your milk back.
Don't leave me, Bishop.
Feel better now? I was reading the trivia that they used actual milk, and I guess and it's spoiled under the hot lights, and I guess Lance Henriksen just smelled awful after.
Yeah, I think I read the same thing. Like he just was like the only one that didn't like react. He just like
he was a trooper,
stayed in character and dealt with it. Oh, that would have been terrible.
Oh yeah. It's
go in with milk and come out with hot cottage cheese.
Ooh, large curd.
Yeah.
So
I made a cheesecake, by the way.
I saw you put hard at work, my friend.
Yeah, 3 of them in the first 8 days of the year.
That'll go well with some Bishop milk.
It will too. Wash it down with a nice tall glass of 2% Bishop.
So Ripley distracts the Queen so Newt can run and hide, and Ripley ends up like barricading herself in a room that just happens to have one of those big mech power loaders that she was operating.
Thankfully.
Earlier. So Newt's hiding under the floor. The Queen's ripping these floor grates up and has basically cornered Newt. When we get the shot of all shots here, Oz, Ripley has strapped herself into this giant yellow power loader. Walks into the camera. You get the standard Jim Cameron blue backlighting behind her and everything.
Oh yeah. And you get with the RoboCop step sound, like sound effects.
Yep. And we get the line among all lines here, Oz. I'm gonna go to our random noun generator here.
I still like sandwich.
Sandwich? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we can go with sandwich. And because we are a PG podcast, folks, I still feel like we have to say the line, but we'll alter it just enough to maintain our audience. And again, so Ripley walks up in this loader and just stares at the Queen and says, "Get away from her, you sandwich."
That's right. Just like earlier when Hudson was angry and was freaking out, he was calling them all fluffernutters.
Yeah. He was just hungry. He was hangry, Oz. He just needed...
He was hangry. He needed a Snickers. He'd have been fine.
He's diabetic.
Yeah.
He was just a little... just needed a little sugar.
Get away from my sandwich.
Get away from yes, my sandwich. and they commence to fight each other. So this power, again, the Queen's, I'm guessing 15 to 20 feet tall. You know, Ripley,
she's a big girl.
Ripley in this suit is probably about 15-ish feet tall, and they're just swinging back and forth at each other. You know, the Queen's trying to stab Ripley with her tail. The Queen gets close enough that her like second xenomorph mouth pops out of her mouth and is like snapping at Ripley's head. And eventually Ripley is able to grab the Queen and dangle her over the airlock and drops her in. But of course the Queen hangs onto the loader, and so they're both in the first airlock. Ripley tries to crawl out. The Queen grabs her foot, and fortunately there's an airlock controller right there that Ripley grabs onto and opens the airlock, sucking the Queen out into space. Ripley defies gravity and the vacuum of space by climbing out of the airlock.
She's strong. Actually,
it's those Kawhi Leonard hands.
Yeah, they put her in the power loader just to even the battle. If it were just Ripley versus the Queen, it would have been. She would have tore her apart, but Ripley would have tore her apart.
Yes.
They had to negate her powers by putting her in the power loader.
Her gigantic hands.
Right.
So she makes it out, closes the airlock. Newt's safe, Ripley's safe. Bishop looks up at Ripley and gurgles through his spoiled milk. Not bad for a human.
Yeah. I'm glad we had a good synthetic in this movie.
Yes. And then we end with a shot of Newt running up to Ripley and saying, "Mommy!" And then we get the final shot of them in stasis. Ripley, Newt, Bishop, and Hicks all next to each other. And that's how we end the movie Aliens, Oz. That is 1986's James Cameron Aliens. At this point in the show, folks, Oz and I give our own unique rating to the film in question. Oz, how would you rate Aliens?
I'm going to give this movie 9 aliens.
9 aliens?
Yep. I think the movie would have been easier for them to navigate if there were only 9.
I think I read in the trivia they only made a dozen of the actual alien suits, but clever editing made it seem like there was a lot more.
Oh yeah, totally. Right. So 9 aliens, that's my rating. What's yours?
I'm going to go with 426 Bishop torsos.
Fair enough.
Yep, that's my rating. Next up,
that's a good one.
It's in honor of LV 426.
Oh, gotcha. It's still good though.
Do you celebrate April 26th as Alien Day?
I celebrate it as Aliens Day.
Aliens, not Alien. I celebrate it as Alien 3 Day.
It's my Alien Resurrection holiday.
If we ever have sequels worse than the original, we could include Alien 3 in there.
That movie is bad.
Yes. All right, next up in the rundown, folks, we got Outside Insight. Oz and I have scoured the interwebs looking for unprofessional reviews that make us giggle. We will share a couple of those with you now, folks. Oz, what is your Outside Insight?
All right, I have a half-star review by Canon History given almost a year ago today, January 24th.
Okay.
I'm gonna read quickly because it's not long, but it's longer than what I usually provide.
Sure.
I hate this movie. I wish it didn't exist. I despise it. I loathe it. I abhor it. James Cameron took everything that made the original Alien a great film and threw it away like it didn't matter. I don't care if this is technically a good movie, as it alternates lowercase, uppercase, and throughout. Technically a good movie. It mangled and destroyed everything the original stood for.
Everything.
It didn't just spit on Ridley Scott's masterpiece. It crapped on it. I'm changing their swear words.
Okay.
I've dipped my toes in the Alien community, and it shows just how much this disgrace has ruined a potentially niche fan group. Now, every piece of media but Alien Isolation, God bless that game. It is a good game. I've played it on the Xbox. It is a pretty tense game. Has followed the ignoramus shadow of this revolting sequel.
Revolting.
Now, I don't understand. Now, this person gets really like Shakespearean now. I truly enjoy the action sequences, and the relationship between Ripley and Newt is awesome. However, if only it wasn't this movie. Wherefore wilt God forsake us with such a tragedy? If only, wherefore doth hath to beast this one, whereforth couldn't beast something else? Oh, thee misery! Thine shan't look upon thee but with the seldom passion of misprise. Truly, this is an example of horrible miscalculation. Every night I cry in bed thinking of this movie.
Every night.
It has destroyed all I hold dear.
Everything. I weep in bed every night because of Aliens.
So let me tell you how I feel, and then I'm going to tell you how I feel in the Old English.
Oh,
doth ye? Yeah. Oh, doth ye dust these? Every night I cry in bed thinking of this movie.
Doth thine weareth thy mother's drapes.
Exactly. Right. So that's the half-star review from Canon History.
Canon History.
Yeah.
Wow. Very emotionally fragile.
Who's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of crying every night.
Every night. It must be a harrowing life you lead.
And you're Shakespeare in the Park.
Yes.
How about you? What's your review?
My outside insight, I got a couple here. I'm going to go with the shorter one. This is from the Internet Movie Database. Left February of 2020, so a couple years as of the time of this recording. This is Sleepin' Dragon 4. Not sleeping, sleepin'. Sleepin' Dragon 4.
Smog.
So often when you think of sequels, you imagine cynical attempts to cash in on successful movies. Efforts to bring in the coins with any old rubbish. You can understand why there's Aliens when you think of the likes of Halloween, Jaws, and Police Academy. So
keep going. Yes. I'm on board.
That's it. That's it right there. So, so it's these hollowed movies that had
cinema masterpieces.
These cinema masterpieces that had inferior sequels, like Halloween, Jaws, and Police Academy.
Oh man, I like that guy. Yeah. He's got.
Police Academy is a fun movie, but I don't know if I would put the first Police Academy movie up on the pedestal with Halloween and Jaws.
Probably not. No. For one, they're different genres, but it has more Mahoney than the other two combined. So. Oh wow.
Oh, all right, folks. We're at that point in the show you've all been waiting for. Our signature segment. The 3-2-1, in which Oz and I each share 3 goods, 2 bads, and 1 about the movie we've been talking about, in this case, Aliens. Oz, what are your 3 goods?
My first good is I really like the Alien Queen's design.
Oh, God, yeah.
The first movie, Alien, we saw a xenomorph, so we knew what to expect. And while this movie did, and this isn't a bad, but it did obviously a very, very poor job of, hiding the foreshadowing. I think there might be a queen. I think you're right. And then lo and behold, but her design was just awesome.
Yeah.
Because all the xenomorph soldiers look the same. But for her, she needed a different look. She had a different look. Even with her, just had a crown, this giant headpiece. So I really like that Alien Queen design. My second good is the overwhelmed Marines. Cameron did a great job of building them up as these we've never lost, egotistical, just they're just very arrogant and quickly meet their match, not only in the initial demise but realizing that they're way in over their head. And so just seeing them in an area where their brute strength isn't going to get it done this time was a fun addition to the movie. It's a lot of times, by the time you send in the soldiers, that's usually what saves the day, but not here. And then the third is just the continuing growth of Weyland-Yutani as the bad guys. This corporate bad guy build up to where, even to work for them to a level of burn. It's almost like the higher you climb higher by demonstrating you have no soul.
No morals, no ethics.
And so Burke, up until he wasn't a good character, was fine. He was likable. He seemed, Paul Reiser did a great job, acting him out to be this likable character. but just lying straight to Ripley's face and making it believable.
Yeah.
It just shows how far the corporate greed goes in the alien universe. So those are my three goods.
It wouldn't be an 80s movie without corporate greed.
No, or 90s or 2000s
Yeah.
or 20. Keep it going. So what about you? What are your goods?
My goods, I'm going to go with the first one being the Marines tech. I kind of sprinkled this in as I was going over the plot, but like the handheld welders that they keep on them, the motion trackers, the vital checkers, the personal cameras they all have, it really kind of puts you in the movie. And even like the sounds they emitted, like the motion trackers, how the pitch gets higher and higher. The closer the movement gets, it adds to the tension, and it demonstrates how proficient they are outside of their weapons as well. They're welding doors shut, and it's welding through steel grates in the floor. It was I don't know. I love like those non-weaponry tools and proficiencies that the soldiers have. My second one, I'll go with let's see. Hicks and Ripley's mutual respect and flirting. Again, okay. Hicks was really the only one who I felt like completely took Ripley seriously from the get-go. And I love just how subtle their relationship is. It's not overt. It's not like these two characters falling in love and giving each other one last kiss before Ripley goes off to fight. It's just this little flirting and this really subtle like relationship that's building, this mutual respect, and there's just a hint there might be a little more to it. And I don't know, it tickles me watching how they interact with each other and how it just slowly grows over the course of the movie.
Right.
And my last one, and this is one that I will never be able to ever fully understand, neither will I articulate it as well as others could, but the maternal themes throughout the movie. Especially with that director's cut intact. You see Ripley grieve over the loss of her daughter at the beginning, how quickly she takes to Newt, how protective she is of Newt. They could have just left after they got on the dropship with Bishop, but she held out hope that Newt was still alive, and she risked not only herself, but Hicks and Bishop to go back for her, as well as even the maternal themes with the Queen as well. And how threatened they were of each other, and how they went at each other to be protective of what they their own children, real or I guess like adopted in a way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So those are my three goods. Oz, what are your two bads?
My first one, and again in a movie like this, nitpicky is a term we throw around a lot when we're talking about movies we like, but this movie literally has the same ending as the original.
Yeah.
And it just, as fresh of an approach as the rest of the movie took, with making it more of an action movie than a horror movie, adding up the there was tension in the first one, but the original Alien is really like a sci-fi ghost story in a way. Mm-hmm. Whereas this one is just full speed ahead action film.
Yeah.
The end is the exact same.
Yeah.
Alien stows on board unexpectedly. Alien gets outsmarted by Ripley and dropped into space. The end.
Yep.
And so that's my first bad. It's just the same ending as the original. And my second one, you had mentioned it as a good. I'm going to put it down as a bad. In likely any other situation, I would be fine with Ripley and Hicks and their flirting, blossoming relationship. However, it didn't fit for me here. I understand that it's there. However, in this dynamic of we are fighting for our lives here, it just seems to be like, you guys find a moment to talk innuendos? Seriously, this is life or death, race against the clock, and you're like, I could take it, show me more. And it's like, it's like early on when it was like loaded, with her in the mech suit, mm-hmm. and like that stuff was fine because there wasn't any emergent threat.
Yeah, there weren't any stakes right then. Yeah.
Yes. And even there at the end when they exchange each other's names, like that was okay. But just some of that, probably more that scene where he's showing her how to use the guns. Mm-hmm. And it's like right now, you guys are flirting right now. Like, this is urgent. So that's my second bad. Is I'm gonna lock it into that one scene where he's showing her how to use the guns.
Okay.
That I'm gonna lock it to that.
Sure. Agree to disagree on that. I accept that.
So what are your bads?
My bads, I'm going to start with the cast. As much as I thought Jeanette Goldstein did a good job, she should not have been cast into that role. Jeanette Goldstein is of, I'm doing this from memory, I think like Russian Jewish, like Orthodox descent.
Okay, right.
And they literally bronzed her skin color to play a Latina. And again, her performance was good, but she shouldn't have been cast in the first place. So again, it's one of those, like, I have incredibly mixed feelings every time I see that character.
Should have been Rosie Perez. Should have been.
I'm trying to think of one of the lines from White Men Can't Jump. Like,
foods that start with the letter Q.
Who is Babe Ruth? Rosie Perez
as what it should have been as Vasquez.
As Vasquez. Oh, I loved it. And she's choreographing a dance for Living Color.
Totally. That's who it is. Mm-hmm. But no, I'm with you there. That you could tell, like, she wasn't recognizable because, like you said, they bronzed her up.
So, and she didn't cast herself. It's one of those things.
No.
But like,
and again, we've said this, I feel like, on repeat lately. It was the 80s.
Yes.
To where it's like, and she was a Cameron staple.
Yeah.
So it's like, we basically, you're too old to play Newt. You are obviously not playing Ripley. We have one other female in the entire cast.
Yeah.
Well, two, if you count the dropship pilot.
Yeah.
But we knew she wasn't a major factor. So it's like, he wanted to get Jeanette in there, and that's where she went. And even like you feel like her role in Near Dark, at that time, Catherine Bigelow was married or was recently married to James Cameron. So there was the connection there. Like, good for her. We talked, who was it a few weeks ago that we talked about, who just like, they kept, we've talked, Mary Ellen Trainor.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, she kind of has that Mary Ellen Trainor effect of, she's a fine actress, but who she knows is getting her roles, which is fine. I mean, it's an industry like any other industry.
Was also in Lethal Weapon 2, which also featured Mary Ellen Trainor.
True. So, all right. So you got your. Was that both or just one?
That was one. I'll keep it quick for the other one. Just the Marines are homophobic and racist and macho and toxic, and we've talked about before. Like, that's the one personality type I pride myself on getting along with just about anybody, and that's the one personality type that I really struggle with. So it works in the movie, and I understand that, but it's just one of those that kind of pushes my buttons.
Fair enough.
All right, so Oz, what's your
I've got 4.
I have several as well. Yeah.
Okay. Why does Bishop react in pain when the alien pierces him at the end? That's one. Like, he's a synthetic. He
don't cry over spilt milk.
Right. Had he said that as he's being ripped in half. Don't worry about me.
Don't cry over spilt milk.
My second one, and this is probably the one I'm going to go with as my, if I had to pick one.
Sure.
Like, when the sentry guns are, like, there are 4 of them.
Yeah.
And they're mowing down these aliens in the hallways. How did the alien blood not, like, dissolve literally everything as it's splashing all over the place in this? Like, those hallways should have been unobtainable after the fact. Why didn't the alien in the water kill Newt like they killed every other person? Like, other than just plot device of, we're going to take her back. And then 4th, why is all future computer font MS-DOS? Every interface on every computer system in this movie was, your MS-DOS font.
C:\\.
Exactly. It was like, everything was that, like, 8-bit, that 8-bit font. So
it's the future.
It's the future. We don't worry about font when we've got when we got to dominate the galaxy in cookies.
It's big cookie was like big tech or big pharma.
Yeah, because I guess on all planets that's the universal font style.
I love it.
All right, so what are your hunts?
I got a couple quick ones I'll throw out before I get to the real one. How does Ripley hold against the ladder against the vacuum of space?
I thought that too. I was willing to accept when she when she elbowed, wrapped her arm around it and kind of grasped on for dear life.
Yeah. But
to climb the ladder against the forces of space, we just watched it suck things that are heavier than her down into it. But like you said, she's got the Kwai hands.
I will say there's a little moment I didn't mention this before that it's one of those extra Jim Cameron touches as she's just kind of climbing. Getting her elbow and her wrist kind of up on and pushing herself out of the airlock. This huge steel box goes right by her head. It's being dragged across and the sound effects were great. It just sounds like it weighs like a literal ton and it just misses her. I don't know.
Well, and to go with that exact same that moment, when she climbed out, she had everything out but one of her legs. And I noticed that because I'm and I knew it was it, but she had one leg still dangling in the airlock as the gates are closing, and then of course just it's just so realistic. Yeah. She got the majority of her body up, and then she does pull that leg out. Yeah. It's just a reactionary, and it's just those little nuanced things. Yeah. I agree. They add a lot to the scene.
My real that I'll go with is, and I think I briefly mentioned this before, earlier in the film. It's kind of. End of Act 1, beginning of Act 2 or so, the Sulaco just arrives in orbit above LV-426, and the stasis pods are opening up. So Ripley wakes up, Hicks wakes up, Hudson wakes up. Yeah. Apone gets up and within seconds has a cigar in his mouth while he's still in the stasis tube. So my is, did Apone keep a cigar in the stasis tube with himself so that he could have it immediately upon awakening?
Fair enough. And I would assume they pump a lot of oxygen into those stasis tubes. So how did the flame not just boof? Right? How did he not Daffy Duck himself when he lit that cigar?
I'm sure it serves as a humidor very well.
Yeah.
I'm not a big cigar aficionado. But
I'm not either.
That cigar had to be really good. And I'm sure he anticipated that because he seems like the kind of guy who is a cigar aficionado. Also a guy who would love a good Otis Spunkmeyer cookie.
Oh, yeah.
Well, folks, that's 1986's James Cameron helmed Aliens. Oz, what do we got in store next week?
We will be back next week. We're going to jump into the horror genre again for this one. And we're going to discuss whether or not the sequel to Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2,
love this movie.
Is a better sequel than the original, or a better movie than the original. I obviously wouldn't be on our list if we didn't feel that it was. But I would also understand if people wanted to argue that's not a sequel, that's a remake. But
whatever.
It is what it is. It's called Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
It's not called Evil Dead Again or
Evil Deader.
Yeah, but yeah, Evil Dead 2 will be on the docket for next week. We both are huge fans of this movie.
All four movies this month are probably top 20, top 25 for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very solid month of fun here. I mean, we obviously when we handpick our own movies, we try to do our best anyway. But
let's torture ourselves.
Yeah, but this. We did last December.
Yeah, we did.
Previous December. But no, this month is a good month. So yeah, we'll be back next week for Evil Dead 2. So that is it. We've got, of course, our social media presence, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Aforementioned Patreon. You definitely could hit us up on any of those platforms. You could drop comments here if you're listening on YouTube. Subscribe, all those things.
Let us know if you disagree, if you really think Alien is a superior film, which you can make a strong argument for.
Yep, we'd love to hear it, and we wouldn't tell you you're wrong because it's a win-win in both situations. But yeah, so Evil Dead 2 for next week. So you got anything you want to send everybody off with?
Nah, I'm psyched to talk about Evil Dead 2.
Oh, I know, I am too. So, all right, well, for another week of Let's Talk About Flicks, we will be back next week with Evil Dead 2. have a good rest of your week, and we hope that wherever you're at, the weather is decent, because it's okay for now here. But, Evil Dead 2 next week. Whatever is going on in your life now is nowhere near as bad as what Ash Williams is doing.
Groovy.
And so, I'm Oz.
I'm Curtis.
And we'll talk at you guys next week.